Darkness kills, destroys the will. Find a spark, make hearts thrill. Hear the tales of time so grim. Shine a light, don't let it dim. Heather Brown downtown, bound. True crime story she's found. In the shadows, secret stay. Need a light that finds the way.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Defeating the Darkness, True Crime Stories with Downtown Heather Brown. That's me, your host. I'm a former homicide and sexual assault prosecutor, and we have with us once again Patrick Wall, a dear friend of mine who was a Catholic priest and monk who was very, let's say, disgusted to learn that his sole job, once he started working in that capacity, was to cover up child sexual abuse and make it go away. And if you haven't listened to the first episode, stop the tape, go back and listen to the first episode so you can hear the backstory of all the things that led up to Patrick making a huge decision in his life to say, I'm not going to do this anymore. And so welcome back, Patrick. We were just about finishing up your story when we ran out of time the last time. So I want to get back to the part of the story. You were telling the listeners how you were 33 years old and you finally made the decision, I can't do this anymore. And so you were telling us how you put in a petition with the Holy See, which is over in Rome, to get basically say, I want to get laicized, which is the formal name for defrocked or like no longer a priest or a monk, right?
Yep. You're relieved of your vows as a monk, and you are no longer to function as a priest. You're relieved of the obligations of celibacy and obedience. You're still a Catholic priest. One of the things that always blows people's minds.
So you are still a priest?
Oh yeah, you're always a priest. Once ordained a priest, you're always a priest. So
really,
in the laicization petition, of course, which almost no one ever reads, but down in the particulars, it's very specific that if someone comes to you and needs to, say their confession, and there is no one else around, I am obligated to hear their confession and to grant absolution. So in the implication of all that is you still have your priestly identity, you still have your priestly capacity. All it is you're relieved of those duties, and so it's one of those things that's really hard. I think for folks to understand also that, if they ever decided to reactivate people, it would simply be by an act of the Pope to make thousands of priests come back online.
Interesting. So if the shit goes down, Patrick, and I think I'm going man down, I can call you and confess all my sins?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You'll give me the absolution?
Absolution.
Do I have to be Catholic, though? I'm not Catholic.
No.
Oh, really? No. All right. Good to know. I got somebody in my pocket. It's going to help me down the road. I love that. Okay, so I can imagine that this was quite a decision for you to make. Like having no bank account. A bank account. No 401k, no retirement plan.
No car.
And really, what are you going to do, right? If you fill out your resume and it's like priest monk, you're like, any other skills?
Well, the first premise, though, that's honestly the hardest part is trying to explain to your family why you're leaving priesthood.
Oh,
because
they thought you did something bad.
Oh yeah, they think you did something bad, or there's a temptress out there, or there's something that went down or whatever. And you can't tell them about the child abuse cases that you've worked on because you know about it either through signing off on the papal secret or confidentiality because of the legal proceeding or priest penitent privilege. Basically, it's caught up in privilege. You can't speak about it. And even if you did speak about it, you decide to, screw the legal system. I'm just going to spill my guts on everything. They don't have the capacity to absorb it because they had no idea that there were that many hundreds of priest cases happening right around them. They had no idea.
Your family, they would have been shocked.
Oh, stunned.
I'm sure the listeners are probably like, oh my goodness, I had no idea there were this many.
Generally, it's a surprise to the average person. Yeah. And so you go through that level. You now have disenfranchised yourself with your entire friend group. You've disenfranchised yourself with a certain percentage of your family who you do not understand and may never forgive you. You also now have employment issues, right? So what do? I've got all of this education. I've got all of this knowledge. I've got all of this experience running parishes and, multi-million-dollar budgets in schools and things like that. But it's not applicable to the
Make a great defense attorney.
religious world.
Oh my goodness. That's got to be unbelievable. Well, I'm really proud that you made that decision. I really am. And so what did you do? Tell the listeners, what did you do? How did you?
The first job that I could get, that I could immediately get into, was working at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Wabasha, Minnesota. And so I did that for a number of months, just working as an orderly. And then that's when I decided, you know what? This is the one chance in my life to make a serious change. And my dad was an airline pilot, my mom a flight attendant. My dad said, well, I've taken you around the country. Where would you want to go if you could go? They said, well, the most moderate climate in the world is Southern California. He said, there's your answer.
Interesting. So you came out here to Southern California.
Came out in 1988 in Southern California, and eventually was able to get a job. And I think the only reason I was able to get that job is because the vice president in charge of the area was a former seminarian for the Diocese of Rome. He looked at my resume and he knew immediately who I was. And he knew immediately that I had pretty darn good skills as with people. And so that's what led me to work first for Emory Worldwide.
Wow. And you went and you got this job, and then what happened? Tell us what happened after that.
Then I'm just working a regular job, and then I got a call from various lawyers because they were working on St. John's Abbey cases, and they essentially were looking for a legal opinion, professional witness, on if what they were being told was true. And I knew it was really real when the son of Miles Lord called me up on a St. John's case. And Miles Lord in Minnesota was a federal judge at the time. And I thought, wow, this is really getting serious. And so as I'm listening to this, and then it just gradually morphed from there. And then eventually I was offered a job at Manley McGuire in Costa Mesa, working investigations for them. And that's basically what I've done ever since.
Working investigations on sexual abuse cases.
Yep. And I've had the privilege to testify in state cases, in criminal cases, in grand jury stuff, and in federal bankruptcy court too.
So now you are an expert witness. And you testify all over about the cover-ups and the way the institution works to cover up child sexual abuse and who the players are, right?
Yeah, and the majority of the time, though, I'm just simply working for the law firm and doing investigations.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I love it. What great work that you're doing. And so you're using everything you learned and everything that happened to you to try to make a difference to help the victims of sexual abuse now.
Yeah, because it makes a difference in listening to them. They don't have to explain code language to me. If they're talking about the way the confessional was set up, or if they're talking about, the sanctuary, or if they're talking about a vestibule or the sacristy or whatever. I know the lingo, right? So it's really easy for me to more quickly do an intake and also to go through a file that's being prepared. Where are the defendants, right? Probably the most basic thing that was revolutionary was one of my first declarations were basically saying, Your Honor, the priest was there, contrary to what the diocese is telling you, because he was listed in the official Catholic directory. And that's a tax document. And Your Honor, you have to take that. That's a judicially noticeable document.
Unbelievable. You are just a wealth of knowledge. So you also wrote a book.
Yeah. So eventually, you get sick and tired of writing the same declaration over and over. And so essentially, Tom Doyle and Richard Sipe and I got together. They're also former priests, that have been doing this work forever. They are the grand poobahs, though, to be fair. And in I did all the research and helped write the book called Sex, Priests, and Secret Codes, 2,000-year history and trail of childhood sexual assault. And all we did is we literally did what we always do, trace it back to the beginning, but also apply the facts of particular cases to the legislation that is sitting on the shelves. Most people don't realize that all of these books that we're quoting from are sitting on the shelf. Now, they may not be available to you in English language, but they're there.
Interesting. And so in this book, Sex, Priests, and Secret Codes, you talk about all these perpetrators and all.
Yep. We talk about the system. We talk about the, all the various treatment facilities, whether it's the Servants of the Paraclete or Southdown up in Canada, or the St. Luke Institute in Maryland. All of these different facilities that have been used by the bishops over the various decades to hide and evade the legal system.
And Patrick, I remember one time when you were teaching my class, you talked about how these places, like when the Catholic Church, when they learn about someone being accused of child sexual abuse, they move the priest to one of these facilities, the treatment centers that are, the land is owned by the Catholic Church, the facilities owned by the Catholic Church,
really
and the
important.
people are employed by the Catholic Church.
Yeah, that's how you maintain that circle of secrecy. So the reason the geographic solution works is you've got a worldwide church that you have the ability, under the color of religion, it looks natural to move a priest to a different location because you're moving them to another Catholic facility, right? And so in the process of that, then it doesn't really raise any kind of shackles or wondering.
So if I'm going to the church down the street and they're like, oh, Father so-and-so was transferred to a different parish.
Well, yeah.
Is that like, should the parishioners be like, what? Like,
well, they should be really concerned about unusual transfers too, because the Code of Canon Law is really clear. They want consistency. Rome likes to keep the roads open, right? They like to have systems that run. So that the way that the rubber hits the road is they like to have a priest in the parish 6 to 12 years at a time. So when you see priests changing
quicker than that,
that's a sign something's going on. Now, that can also mean a sign, like if you look at my assignment history, you're going, what in the world is going on? How can this guy all of a sudden be at St. Bernard's on a Tuesday in March, and on a Thursday, he's the administrator at St. Jerome's in Maplewood on Thursday morning? What in the world is that? That's because there was a perpetrator there. I literally found out on a Tuesday afternoon after a finance council meeting, Archdiocesan Finance Council meeting at the Chancery. Kevin McDonough tells me, oh, by the way, Thursday morning, you're going to be the administrator at St. Jerome's. Good news is, that's good. Bad news is you can't live there because the priest is still there. You're going to have to live with Charlie Lockowitzer over in Maplewood and have to commute over. And my first question was, what happened is, and the answer is, do you really need to ask? Duh. The priest is having problems, right? And so that when you see those rapid transfers, I tell that story because rapid transfers means something very specific in the Roman system. Or if you chart you go through the official Catholic directory and you chart the assignment history of say a Franciscan, and if he is in like 13 dioceses over 26 years, something's really wrong.
something's up.
Something's up.
Shady. Interesting. Okay, so they move them to these treatment facilities sometimes. And tell us about the treatment
it's
facilities.
perfect because it's in this circle of secrecy and circle of confidentiality, because there are psychiatric nurses that are there are doctors that are there are psychologists that are there are lawyers that are there, and they all have obligations of confidentiality.
Yeah.
Now what happens is those reports are written, so if the guy is an ephebophile, or if he's a pedophile, or if he has various paraphilias that affect his sexuality and he is acting out, that's put together in a written report, sent back to the diocese. It's in the secret archives so that knowledge is spread to the people who need to be in the know. So that's why you'll see various letters in the file, Monsignor Garcia, do not return to the Archdiocese of Los Angeles because we know of, you're probably going to get charged criminally and we're probably going to get civilly sued. Stay in New Mexico.
Wow.
That's the definition of evasion. And that is the quintessential way that the geographic solution works in the Roman world.
That's the play that they make. Okay, interesting. Well, I knew that from our case that we worked on together. So going back to, for those of you who didn't listen to the first episode, Patrick and my husband met when we were all at a charity event, and Patrick informed my husband that he was an expert witness in cases of sexual abuse against the Catholic Church in particular. And I was working on a case, and boy, did I need an expert witness to tell me and break it down for what I had in front of me. I did have boxes and boxes of documents, which you mentioned on the last episode. That's basically they kill you with paper, right? Civil firms do that all the time, right? They'll just send you boxes and boxes of discovery, which take you forever to go through. And so I didn't know codes and the language, and I didn't know who the players were. But when you sat down with me on this particular priest, case, and went through the boxes, what you uncovered was instrumental in me getting a plea deal from this particular priest because
we were able to diagram it out just like a mob family. So, we could show how this document shows the knowledge went to this guy, and then how all of these so-called privileged discussions and privileged information was shared amongst a whole bunch of people.
They all knew.
Obliterating any privilege available.
Yeah, they had all shared all this information. Yeah. And in particular, this particular priest had been moved and transferred to one of those facilities, the treatment facilities you're talking about. And the treatment facility sent a letter back saying, this pervert, this priest should never be
He's fixated
around children again. He's very fixated on children. Yeah. And he wasn't even he was a phoebophile. And for those listening, a pedophile is someone who's sexually attracted to children, prepubescent children, and a phoebophile is someone who's attracted to children, post-pubescent children, but still under 18. So that's when you have your 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids that are being molested. And Father Lyons was just that, but he was impulsive in his actions and was doing all kinds of stuff. But more importantly, their own treatment center said, don't let this guy around children. And they were playing the move around game. But what was most disconcerting to me that you indicated was when he was returned to a position where he could access children by the church after getting that letter saying, don't let him back around children, which they allowed him back around children. And, but they did it under the guise of, we're going to put a treatment team on him. The treatment team is going to watch him and watch over him to make sure he doesn't do anything.
Right.
And when you looked at that.
And we can prove it, right, Heather? Because there's an aftercare contract in his file. And the aftercare contract basically this is the terms of how the team is going to facilitate him supposedly being celibate and not to sexually assault again. That they were supposed to be the supervisors, this oversight team that would protect the children from a guy that was a phoebophile. Yeah. And the thing that's hard is that all of them were going to lie that they had no prior knowledge, even though they were named to the aftercare contract, the team, and the terms of all of his proclivities were in the report.
Yeah. Well, but more importantly, the thing that you pointed out to me was that the players that were put in charge of his aftercare, 3 of the 5 had been accused of sexually abusing one. Remember one, I think, ended up killing himself, threw himself off a building in Mexico. Do you remember that? Because he was having sex, impregnated a young girl, I think.
Yeah, and the police were after him.
And the police were after him. So he threw himself off a building in Mexico. The other one had sustained accusations of child sexual abuse against him. So they basically put the fox in charge of the hen house. And I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. And so we made this whole mob board about the players on the treatment team. And we were ready and locked and loaded on that case, all thanks to you and the good work that you did. And it was really, I got to say, Patrick, an eye-opener for me professionally to really understand going forward that you need to know who are the players involved, what's their end game, what's their motivation to lie, cover up, and you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know a lot of those things that you brought to my attention. So I thank you for doing that. Unfortunately, my victim ultimately didn't want to testify when it came time for trial, and so knowing that, I just dropped. I still had a few days to get him on board, but I dropped some subpoenas on the known players in that case. And as soon as I dropped the subpoenas on the foxes, guarding the hen house, his attorney called and said he wanted to plead guilty. So he ended up...
He pled guilty to a felony.
He pled guilty to a felony. It wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough for all the things that he had done over the years, but at least he's a convicted pedophile, and I do take pride in that. But the pride and the glory goes to you. Well, Jesus first, but you. And then because I wouldn't have known who all those players were. I wouldn't have known the documents that were in my file unless you had come alongside me pro bono to help me with that case. So thank you. I love all the good that you're doing in the world. And I need to ask you, because, you're a priest and you saw the underbelly of your own institution that you were, working so hard to be a part of, left that, and now actually testify. Two questions. A, are you afraid of getting whacked? Like, if I put you on this podcast talking smack on them, are they going to come back and try to whack you?
It's nothing I haven't said in a declaration or that, whatever. The system is so broad and it's so pervasive.
They'd have to kill a lot of people, right?
I'm really way down the list of importance.
Okay, good. And my next question is, all of this that you've shared with us, has that affected like your faith in God? Because to me, that's like,
this is the hardest thing, is that I've come to the conclusion that God has nothing to do with the institutional church.
Amen.
And the hardest part is that the spirituality that propels one along and gives somebody energy that actually connects you to community and gives you reason to continue to do good things, is really not supported by the institution. And the authentic life is one where it's recognizing the God within every single person, right? And not in being dependent upon an institution, which is only going to defend the institutional importance of land, property, money, in political influence. That doesn't matter. It has absolutely nothing to do with the faith. And so that's the long and hard lesson of all of this. And you just have to know that these particular guys in leadership are always going to choose the institution over the faith.
Unbelievable. It's sad and disheartening. And well, I'm glad not everybody's going to, because you certainly didn't. And you took a stand against what was wrong, and you decided and made that courageous step. I mean, I think that's really courageous of you, Patrick, to have everything that you've worked for and have to turn away from it.
You have to.
And that's the same thing, like when people are in law enforcement or and you're like, all of a sudden you find out your partner's on the take.
They have the same
you have a
moral dilemma. It's the same moral dilemma. And people face that in business. They face it in law enforcement. They face it in medicine. I mean, there's a lot of bad things that happen in medicine too, where people literally have to do stuff that's not in their best interests in order to, protect the patient.
Yeah. Well, God bless you for doing the right thing. I think that really is the Lord's work, that you turned away from that. So and you had I think you have a huge role now going forward in helping other people and survivors to fight back against, the sexual abuse. And I can't even imagine how many victims you've been able to help with your testimony, because that expert testimony, I know it helped me in my case, and I think that you're helping countless others. So
I've done thousands of intakes that unfortunately you have to decline because the law doesn't support it. And there are, but the good thing is there's some solace and there is some relief that you can provide to help that person, even if the legal system can't help them.
Yeah, just let them know I believe you, and I
Exactly.
I care,
Yep.
and let them vent and tell their story.
Yeah,
There's power in that too.
Yeah, and oftentimes the bad guy's pattern and practice, and it's absolutely point by point consistent. But the law doesn't support an action at this moment in time.
Wow, unbelievable. And then to do all that and then have your house burned down in the Palisade fire.
Yeah, again, that's just human error. I mean, there were so many things that could have prevented that from happening. Yes, there was an extraordinary event with the winds, but once you've lived in Southern California for a couple decades, you should expect fires, right? And you should expect that we have...
And mudslides and earthquakes.
The whole gamut,
and
right?
crime, unfortunately.
Right. And the most beautiful sunshine ever, too. So you prepare for it. But if humans, if we don't prepare for fire, guess that's what happens.
Yeah. And you have to have a strong foundation, right? Your life has to be built on a strong foundation of trust and faith, and I think that's what helps get us through the darkest times as well.
It does.
Yeah. Well, gosh, this has been fascinating. I hope the listeners, I'm confident that they've enjoyed the inside scoop and the nitty gritty about the Catholic Church and the things they do. And it's not just the Catholic Church, it's institutions.
No, it's institutional life. And there's a lot of good research that's happening. There's some really good modalities for helping people heal that are coming forward. I would just want to make a specific plug for stem cell research. And the whole concept is that the major organ that gets damaged in childhood sexual assault is the brain. And if we can help return the elasticity of the brain cell, we can help people heal. And that, just as the crime of sexual assault reverberates through the entire body, right down to the DNA in every cell, if we can start to return parts of the brain to a greater elasticity, we can send a positive vibe of growth and healing through the entire body that will affect that person's health and eventually their life outcome.
Well, that's fascinating.
Oh yeah, that's what's coming.
I know it all starts in the brain because crimes and sexual abuse, it replays in your brain. That's really where you got to heal,
right? Which
then heals your body. But I didn't know about the stem cell elasticity thing. How do we find out more about that?
That is what's being worked on, and it's slow. And we're going to have to do the original models, of testing. And get the stem cell funding to be able to do that, but the Brain Trust has already got together and mapped it out. So
wow, there's even more hope out there than we thought.
There is.
That makes me really happy. Mm-hmm. I love that. All right, anything else? Anything I didn't ask you that you want to add or tell our listeners?
I would just say that there are fantastic people out there who have stepped up over the last 30 years, who have brought forward information that have made so what is known today is not a mistake. It's because there have been literally hundreds of people that have come forward either with what they know or pictures or what has happened to them. And thank you to them for doing that. Literally, they did the pro bono work that helped a lot of this happen.
Yeah, and I think there's a great message behind that. Like you can use whatever happened to you to help other people.
Yep.
And that can really become your superpower. You can use the bad things that happen to you to help other people, and it can help you heal.
And that's how we change that criminal arc. Otherwise, the criminal activity will continue if we don't, specifically do something to change that arc.
Yeah.
Then it'll continue. But because we have now the secret that I thought would never get loose in 1998, it's loose and known now.
And you're talking about what we've talked about today.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. So it does help. It does help.
You're a prime over arcs of time. It makes a difference.
It does make a difference. Well, you certainly are making a difference out there, and that is why I brought you on to this episode, is just to talk about all the wonderful things you're doing out there to come alongside victims of sexual abuse and shine a light on the darkest places. And I can't thank you for all the help you've given me over the years, all the times you've come to my class to impart your knowledge on my students, and now coming on here, driving all the way from Calabasas to join us and talk about what you know, so that maybe someone listening, it'll encourage them to tell their story. Or if someone needs an expert witness, all the lawyers that are listening, if you need an expert witness in a sexual abuse litigation case against the Catholic Church, Patrick Wall's the guy. You can reach out to him and find him. Is there a social media place we can send people to? Or
yeah, I have a LinkedIn page, and you can find me at Grant and Eisenhofer as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. You really are a shining light in the darkest places for other people, and you have been in my life, and I thank you, and my hat's off to you. And I just think you're an amazing human being and a great friend, and I respect the hell out of you, and I think you're probably one of the smartest people I know. So thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap. Until the next episode of Defeating the Darkness, if you can't find the light, be the light like Patrick Wall. Take care. See you next time.
Be the light, shine so bright. Turn the wrongs, make them right. In the night, battles fight.